So welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jim Dalkousis, the founder and CEO of PERSUIT, and I am privileged today to be accompanied here by Thomas Lauber, the General Counsel at Bayer. Thomas is in Germany at the moment. I think that's right, Thomas. And Lewis Bretz, partner at PwC. So thank you both, Thomas and Lewis, for joining me. Going to be a fantastic session today. The topic, of course, is top of mind for everyone in legal leadership. And in a nutshell, it is around how AI is impacting legal leadership, the function, what the future looks like, and what's top of mind for everyone. I think right now it's fair to say, if I can set the scene a little bit, expectations are rapidly changing. And AI is having an accelerated effect on what those expectations of legal leadership are. Both leadership in-house as well as legal leadership at law firms too. There's no doubt, and understanding that the playing field, the landscape, the different pressures and how we're going to address each of those different pressures. And essentially, what does legal leadership mean? And what do we think it's going to mean in the future? What does it mean today? What do we think it's going to mean in the future? And what are the kind of, I suppose, what are the skills, the attributes, and the learnings that we're all going to have to embrace to own and help drive that future, and I suppose, and meet the expectations that are changing all around us, right from the CEO, the CFO level, and even at the team level. So that's the kind of scene I want to set, if you like. And what have you seen, and what do you think it means for change expectations around legal leadership?
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, I'll give it a go, and then I'll defer
Yeah,
to talk about what I see with my clients, and then no doubt Thomas will have a
yeah,
perspective as well. Look, I think it's kind of trite to say that this is this is an existential moment for the GC and for the office of the GC. And there's a genuine change happening about what does it mean to be a great lawyer, and what does it mean to be a great legal function in 2025, and what will it mean to be great in 2030. And those are really deep questions that we're seeing every organization answer or attempt to answer or start to think about answering somewhere on that journey. And I kind of draw that distinction quite distinctly because I think there's a real difference between what we see in the function, right, which is kind of some practical things around thinking about business metrics, thinking about kind of how you're digitizing your operations, how do you embed innovative thinking, what does agentic orchestration look like within a legal function. There's those practical things that go on. And then there's also that leadership question for the GC and the leaders in that function, which is, what are we here to do, right? What is the ask of our board, of us as legal functions, and of me as a GC, as the senior lawyer in the organization? And that's a question which, is much more about how are you delivering value? How are you going from being a reducer of risk, for want of a better expression, to a function and to a set of individuals that are embedded in unlocking the strategy of the business, that are ultimately a source, whether through their individual capability or through the data they have, a source of competitive advantage. And that's the kind of the things that we're seeing going on.
that's interesting, Lewis. I wonder, are you seeing a bit of confusion now about exactly what the role should be, what the function should be, where the focus should be? Is it about risk mitigation? Is it about value creation? Is it about wholesale adoption of AI? I can sense, certainly from the discussions I've had, there's not clarity that everyone can look at and say, this is what it means. There's a whole spectrum. So I wonder if that spectrum, or in a sense, confusion, is making the job even harder.
Yeah, I look definitely, and I think there's some real things on there, which is as the GC, you're the senior lawyer, the legal advisor to the board, right? Ultimately, you own a lot of risks, both in a kind of de facto, but also in a legal sense, right? In a lot of organizations and in a lot of jurisdictions. So there's a clear set of responsibilities there, but then also you are at the heart of enabling business processes, and whether it's something as simple as contracting, where ultimately, if you can shorten your cycle time, or you can surface more data to the business, that helps your sales teams, right? That helps your procurement teams in an M&A context. If you can get a deal closed faster, or you can, you can do that
Yeah.
activity better, that's a source of competitive advantage. But they are different. They are different activities than the kind of control of risk. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely, I don't know whether confusion is the word I would use necessarily, but definitely a source of some deep thought required
Yeah.
and some conversations that are going on at lots of different levels.
Thomas, your thinking there?
Yeah, it's good I go second. So for me, I've been saying for a long time that we are in kind of a double transformation. It's the job is completely changing and the business is completely changing. And when I came to Bayer, just for background information, we got a new CEO also coming in, Bill Anderson, and he had something that was very different approach on how you work. We call it dynamic shared ownership, where we work in small squad, thinking from the customer perspective. We started with all our three businesses, and it's really flexible, empowered teams. And as a leader, it's more about coaching, yeah. It's about architecture, it's about vision, yeah? And we work with goals. And I think it's super important in those times to provide a goal for your people. Why are we doing this? Where are we heading to? We do have a plan, and it's flexible, and you will have to adapt. But I think this helped us a lot on this coaching, that you say, and it's tough, correct? You used to be, hey, we need to decide at the top. No, 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 you guys. And it's not always good, correct? So also, where do you intervene? How do you step back? But it gives them this freedom, and this gets more critical now if you want to work in this new AI world. Yeah, it's even more important. And we'll talk a little bit later for sure what are the qualities you need. But that's pretty much in line what we've been seeing. And for me, it's this, I have to provide clear guidance. And the other thing that's really crucial is I also have to be a role model on using AI tools. Yeah, so the person I'm closest with, and I guess I've always been close, but I mean closer now, is my head of IT, digital development, cybersecurity. Those are the people I talk most to. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Lewis.
Karen. No, I was just going to say, I think, Thomas, something you said there really kind of resonated with me, which is around that kind of coaching, that giving people autonomy. And we'll talk about probably autonomy in an agentic context, but actually increasingly the value of the function, the value of lawyers is in the margins, right? It's in the shades of gray, it's in those edge cases, it's in those corner cases where actually you can't give people a playbook and say, go and do this. This is the way you should do it every time. Because actually, if you're doing a role where you can playbook it and you can say, do it this way every time, or run this algorithm over it, guess what? That means it's right for moving. And I think that, but that does require, exactly as you said there, Thomas, some coaching, and it's a new set of skills and a way of thinking people got to develop, I think.
It really does lead into the question of what does it mean? What does it mean to be a leader of a legal function in the future? And I think we're kidding ourselves if we think we know all the answers right now. I just think that is too difficult. But there are some core attributes. Talk to me about, perhaps, Lewis, what are some of the core attributes you have seen from teams that you have worked with, and perhaps leaders that you have worked with, as they're working out their priorities, as they're working out how they're going to set their function up, how they're going to set the team up for success? What are some of those like core attributes that you see that kind of stand out as advantages in kind of navigate what is increasingly complex, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's technology, agentic, whatever it is, whether it's, am I a risk mitigator? Am I a value creator? They are all complicated themes, and there's push and pull in each one. What do you see as helping in terms of attributes in legal leadership?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think there's a couple of things, and my touchstone is when I speak to GCs who start, when you ask them how they're doing, or you ask them, what's going on, if they start talking to me about their results and about the business success and, kind of what's happening in this quarter, that's usually a really good indicator to
That's a
me
good sign.
that they're in a space that they're kind of positive. So I think for me, look, there's a couple of things. The first is, I think being really open about this moment we're in and being open with their senior leadership team and actually with the team as a whole about, we are going through a change, in legal as an industry. And that means we have to be quite open about the fact that we need to be clear about what we're trying to achieve and what do our stakeholders ask of us. And then at the next level down, encouraging and coaching people through having that conversation with their business stakeholders on the ground, because actually this comes down to personal relationships. That's how change really sticks. And so being prepared to have that conversation about what do you need from me, what's helpful, is a skill, and I think that's important. And I think then that kind of leads into a conversation around, how do you then move up the chain, right? And so we talk about this push-pull, which is, the great functions are where legal is being pulled into processes. You might think about kind of in certain industries about new product development is always the example I fall to, which is, great legal functions are being involved in that process early because actually the business realizes that they've got value to add. In other organizations, it's a gate that you've got to kind of rush through at the last moment. And so that's that. And so I think there's that kind of cultural leadership stuff that really matters. I think there is then a straight technology and preparedness layer that requires some investment. And that's both bringing the right skills into the function around kind of people who understand data, who understand innovation, who are prepared actually to be disruptive, and then making the investment in technology and in change to make it happen. And so kind of operates at both ends as I see it, but those are some of the attributes that I'm seeing at the moment.
Yeah. Thomas, I'm going to ask you the same question, but in your own personal context and what you found perhaps you didn't have or you were lacking that you needed to build in terms of skills or attributes to be able to manage through. Because I think a kind of a real example is thinking, I think I'm short on X skill. Here's what I need to do to adapt. That would be super, super interesting, I think, for the audience.
Absolutely. So it's pretty much the same I told the people. I said, first of all, you have to understand the business, most crucial, right? Then you also need to know your business partner, the personal relationship piece, correct? Then I said, hey, the next thing is you need to understand your processes and you need to understand which digital tools you can use to optimize your processes. And then I went, and it's really great if you're still a great lawyer or a good lawyer. And they were shell shocked, correct? When I came in, they were like, huh? Because the lawyering skill is top of your mind, correct? And it was interesting in the way. So when I started working in the whole digital field, which was years and years ago, it was people were always coming in complaining, saying, you know what, PERSUIT doesn't do this and this, and it doesn't do that and that.
We've never heard that before, though, Tom.
No, of course not. That's a bad example. And you were like, maybe not. So I started working with all the systems. I had the digital team come in, explain to me everything, correct? And next time they came in, I said, no, I work with it. It does all of this. It's just the way and people, it was all hearsay.
Yes.
So it's this,
hearsay.
You really have to work with the tools. Yeah. And you have to find out which tools work for you. Not everybody. So like when I work with my assistant, he used Kanbo for all processes. I still have no clue how Kanbo works, but it was great for us. But I had different tools I use. So you have to find out which tools work for me. And you really have to go out always and say, look, guys, the way I do it is I take 1 hour out of my day where I educate myself, working with PERSUIT, Harvey, working with all our systems. And they're like, what, an hour? And I said, yes, an hour, and you can do the same. And it's just all stressed out. So it's really role modeling, pushing it, constantly going online, saying, hey, you have to drive the innovation. There's a lot of reluctance. People are afraid of losing their jobs ultimately. It's crystal clear. You have to overcome and say, and I've shared this with you. I think in-house for me is the place to be. And I might be wrong, but I think it's going to get way more interesting because a lot of things you pay for now, you will get via AI. And you can actually focus on the great.
We'll talk about that.
It's easy to say, but people have to start believing in that, correct? So it's this, really mindset change management.
I love just the hands-on Thomas experience and being able to talk from having done the walk. It is very hard to lead, I think, anything if you haven't essentially been on the tools. Just like it was really hard to lead as a general counsel if you hadn't done any of the kind of work as being a lawyer. It's really hard. Right now, I think it's the very same, unless you have at least a level of familiarity and you can work with the technology that's available. It's very hard to preach. You have to do some of the work. So I love those examples.
And I would add to that. It's just a lot of GCs have for sure talked with their HR people in leadership and coaching. And then they always ask you, what's the split in your daily work? And you go like 70-30. And they're like, oh, that's super. And you're like, no. 70% is content. And like, oh, that's not good. You need to do more. But that's why I think we're actually not in a bad position, because wherever we go, we always need to know the content. Yeah. And the same is true here. So that's, I think, is a good skill set we have, where in other functions, you were really a leader because you have so many people, correct? But we always had to work content.
Yeah. So I think just I suppose wrapping up on that point, I think it really does underscore general counsel's legal leadership it is much broader now than being evaluated just purely on risk mitigation. It is trying to work out, how am I going to be evaluated by kind of a measurable contribution to enterprise value? And that is so much more than risk mitigation. It is much more now, I think, around being able to leverage and operationalize the insights and data, including what we're seeing with AI. So it's complex, multi-layered, but much broader, I think, than certainly traditional views around risk mitigation, moving much more towards contributing to enterprise value. All right, let's move on. I'm going to give a kind of a bit of a prompt here and get your feedback on this prompt. Agentic AI is rewriting the rules of legal work and redefining the relationship between in-house teams and their outside counsel. Agree, disagree, thoughts? Lewis, let's start with you. I've got lots of thoughts on this one, but I'll defer to going third.
There's a lot to unpack here, and I feel my inner lawyer coming through and wanting to question kind of, timing and whether there are any rules in the first place, and whether I accept the premise of your question. But let me say this. Look, I think if I kind of take your question as I hear it, which is, AI is rewriting the relationship between in-house teams and outside counsel. Of course it is, right? Of course it is. And as Thomas has just said, that's because there is a significant amount of work that once you had to go outside for, which you can do yourself. There are a load of new entrants to the market, Big Four amongst them, right? And I still consider it to be new, which, again, will only accelerate through the use of AI. And so, yes, absolutely, things are changing. My only kind of comment on my only bill would be, it's rewriting, right? It's rewriting the rules, and that's not quite the same thing as the rules having been rewritten, such as they ever existed, or that change having really happened yet. And so what we're seeing is that in certain contexts, like, sure, the relationship's changing and people are thinking about it, but could I hand on heart say what I see at the moment is like a wholesale, in the way that it's sometimes presented, we're probably on that journey, right? Would be my perspective.
Thomas, I know you've got some strong views on this.
Absolutely, and I have to say I'm often more wrong or too optimistic. Right, when I became GC, I said no more emails in 6 months. It took 4 years and almost no emails, but I think this time it's really different. I think it's going to redefine dramatically, and I think we shared this, and you also came out with a great article. I think we'll go hourly rates away, flat fee. I think it's going to be a monthly fee for data. I will pay for data, same as I pay for IT tools at some point. And we're working with some providers on this. where I say, I need a different knowledge. I need access to the data that I don't have in-house. Yeah. And it's the same in-house where we have not been good at least all organizations I've seen, is the knowledge management. With AI, it's not even where you store whatever. We can access everything, correct? So it's going to be, we have a huge knowledge pool and then we'll buy some more wherever we need it. So it is going to be really very different. And I think a lot of law firms are coming from, we need to optimize our workflow and we need to optimize our, and I think that's the wrong, they need to, it's survival at some point. Yeah, it will be
right.
I think there's going to be huge disruption. And I think it's going to be a new way of working with them.
Yeah.
A very new way. And that's going to be very interesting.
So Thomas, we've talked about this before, but you really see each law firms as essentially data, I call it warehouses. There's certainly data that you can access. That's what you're interested in. You're not so interested, at least today, in a firm optimizing their workflow so they can, let's say, deliver a legal service more efficiently. You think the service is going to be providing access to the valuable data that that firm has during the course of its existence, being able to create and give you insights that perhaps another firm cannot give you. So it's not about workflows; it's really about data. That's where you're coming from.
Correct. It's about you can talk to agents, correct? You will still need some experts. You will do educating a lot, correct? If you let's say you start with a new topic where you haven't been familiarized antitrust, and you get access, you can work for 2 weeks, get super educated, and then have a completely different conversation with the law firm than you had in the past. So that's where I'm heading to, and where I think it's going to end up.
Yeah,
it's so interesting. Sorry,
go on,
say, like, it's so interesting to me because I think when you think about it on one level, that's not. I don't know why that's new, right? Which is that actually, when you think about what GCs and what clients have wanted from their firms, they've always wanted outcome. They've always wanted insight. They've wanted an answer. And actually, what we've created, or what we have in our space, is this whole industry which is obsessed with kind of showing working and showing how you got there, and the service is the time taken to get to that outcome.
Yeah.
And I find it so interesting because actually we're almost finally getting to that point where there's overlap now between, can I have the insight? Can I have the answer? Can I have the data? I'm not worried about how you got there. And that's just so interesting to me, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's funny, when I think about both those things, you're absolutely right. You've got the world steering towards what is the outcome, and I'm happy to pay for that outcome. I don't really kind of care so much about how long it's taken to get there. So I absolutely agree. But if I think about all the conversations I'm having and the key themes that I'm hearing, both from general counsels and the expectations that are being put on general counsels, it kind of summarizes into two. One is, why aren't we doing that work in-house now, leveraging AI? And two, if we have to go outside, why is it still costing so much? How is AI helping us? And how are the law firms leveraging AI to make that cheaper? So it's really very kind of high level. But if you think about how much, for example, mind share a CFO can give, the CFO listens, is hearing all about AI and its impact on legal. They are thinking about, well, can we do more work in-house then? We've got a big in-house team. We must be able to do more work. And two, my external costs must come down. So I know it's very basic and fundamental, but I think, and then you will see and we've started to see it already, an expectation that in-house is doing more. They're leveraging more tools. I just read an article this morning on some of the FT awards and some of the in-house teams there talking about, well, we can do a first pass now. So we're much more informed when we go to outside counsel than we ever were before. Even that insight and an expectation that, well, we can do a lot more we can certainly do a lot more. And so that our expectation of what external providers can provide may be changing, and the way we procure those services may change too. So it's a fascinating space. And coming back to the data and outcomes, that's certainly entirely aligned with certainly with the PERSUIT view, right? And looking at the whole potential agentic workflow in relation to external legal services, whether it's law firms, whether it's a Big Four, whether it's ALSPs, whether it's the AI native law firms, whatever that actually means right now. You'll have data that will tell you, in our case, Percy, does this stay inside or does this go externally? If this piece of work goes externally, which kind of provider is best placed for this external work? And then tracking right from the pricing, the selection, the management, and the final outcome. So certainly our view is it's inevitable that the data and now what we're seeing with Agentic AI will help manage that entire external legal work workflow, if you like. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it has to be that way. And I get a lot of clients who come to me and they'll say the conversation will go something like this. It'll go, we want to reduce our legal spend. Or sometimes I'll just get, Lewis, by what percentage should our outside counsel spend reduce because of AI? And I'm like, I don't know. What kind of, we can give you some benchmarking data, but that maybe, anyway. But I think for me,
Lewis, tell them 26% with PERSUIT. Just provide that answer and that will help them.
Fine. That's what I'll tell them. Look, but I think for me, what's interesting, and we've been working with Maui and in your team, Jim, on the kind of outside counsel maturity model is when you look at optimizing your function, particularly your cost base, you have to start by saying, well, look, what are we providing as a function? What does our service catalog look like? How can we kind of take some stuff off that? Then we look at, what can we insource? What can we do in-house? And how does that reduce the total amount of spend? And then you look at, well, exactly as you say, with PERSUIT, what are we sending out? Who are we sending it to, and how are we getting the right outcomes? And actually, you have to do each of those stages and look at it as a whole. Otherwise, you just might be nibbling around the edges, and that's got to be right.
Oh, I'm going to ask Jenna to join us and do the very first poll that I think we've scheduled. We've got 3 or 4 polls that we want to run through just to get some audience participation and feedback. Here's the first one. How far along is your team in adopting AI? So just a quick 20-second poll on this one. Which one do we think? Exploring conceptually, running small pilots, right through to fully integrating into the AI workflows. And Jenna, when you think we've had enough time on that, I think we're going to move to, I think we've got a next one coming up, and then we'll move back to the discussion. All right, here we go. Okay, probably not surprising here. Really, the most popular using Gen AI for basic drafting, not quite yet into the fully integrating workflows. The next one, Jenna, we had, which barrier most limits your team's ability to leverage AI effectively? So again, just a quick poll here from the audience. I reckon, here's my call. My call is going to be leadership prioritization. That's my call. We'll see whether I'm right. God, I couldn't have been more wrong. Interesting. Security and compliance concerns. That's interesting because that tells me, well, if we can manage to get over that, that's really interesting. I would have thought leadership. All right, fantastic. Okay, let's move on. Next topic I have, Thomas, you've touched upon this. This is one of my favorites, and you and I have spoken about this before. Let me give you the prompt. Transformation is as much about people as technology. How do we lead our teams through change? You've talked a little bit about this, Thomas. I'm going to mention an example that you and I spoke about before. I remember bumping into a partner of a law firm. In fact, my ex-law firm, DLA Piper, and I talked to that partner about innovation and change within DLA Piper. And that partner, and I was talking about, I think Thomas, you and I might have had discussion, and I was giving the impression, and I had the view that change was age dependent. And that partner said to me, Jim, it's not really age dependent. We can see from even some of our most junior lawyers are change resistant because they've been trained a particular way. They want to stick to it. Jim, it's not age dependent, it's attitude dependent. And I love that distinction. Now, there might be a broad correlation between age and attitude, but I'd love to hear your views, your experience around, and I know leading from the top is key. We've talked about that. What other experience, Thomas, are you facing? Have you had any insights around change?
No, I love the example, and I was also a little bit biased on that one. Yeah, like you said, and it. But the more I thought a lot about this because it is almost crystal clear. Imagine you started studying law, and AI was just in the background. Now here you are ready, having studied this, and now being told
that's right.
Everything is different. It's clearly, I mean, it makes perfect sense, correct? It's the people who start now will know that it's different, but it makes perfect sense. And it made me, what we have now, we really have somebody taking care of change management. So we have to get the messages right. This is something where lawyers are not the best people to address it. And I think I shared this. There's this new Maslow pyramid of the needs of a person, of the society, based on AI. And the things you talk about when I came in was you have to be resilient in this VUCA world, as we all know, correct? It's one of the key factors. And what is left when you work in AI is the curiosity. It's this trust in yourself. You have to be curious and you have to be creative. That's what they cannot take away, I think. But you also will have to be willing to learn with AI. There's this famous quote here, but it's true, correct? And kids in the school see it now that some know how to handle with AI, not being caught, correct? Or even if it's allowed, and it's just better, correct? So that's what people will have to understand. And it's like you said, how can I convince the people that it will make their job way more interesting?
Yeah.
Their jobs will be different, but will not necessarily go away. If we don't start using AI, correct? Yeah, of course, maybe at some point somebody will come in and say, I'm not only saving you cost, I can take over your whole legal department because they're not using AI. I can save the company 40 or 30%. Yeah. And you're a CFO, you're saying, hey, Thomas, it was nice working with you, but I get 30% from those guys. Yeah, so it's this understanding this need, but then it's really something where you need to take the people along. And the last point is, of course, how do we help educating the next generations on learning, correct? Because if we now get a post, if there's fantasizing still or has hallucination or whatever, or even not, at least you have to have a decent understanding what is written in the memo, correct? Like I said, we just care about the outcome. And we need to judge whether it's a good outcome, whether it's from AI or outside counsel. But you have to develop that skill. And that's going to be interesting how you do that in the future. I think those are the two things where you need to take people along.
I was going to say something controversial before I do so. Let me pass over. Lewis, your thoughts on that? Oh, you're on mute, I think, Lewis.
Sorry, now we all want to know, Jim. Look, I think to me, there's a couple of things, and actually that poll was quite insightful and consistent with what I see. Look, it's no good just standing up in a town hall and saying we should use AI more. Like, actually across the board, every CEO, every GC, every leader is talking about AI and how important it is, right? Big tick, great. You actually have to provide people with the tools, and you actually have to provide people with a platform that they can use. And if you're just chucking kind of vanilla light Copilot on people, you'll get some mild productivity benefit, but actually you're probably not going to see the the real revolution that we're all talking about and that you're seeing. So I think you have to provide people with the tools and the platforms, and you have to enable them to use it. You have to train them. And I remember the best bit of training I ever did in my life. I did an Excel course and I did a Word course. And I spent 2 days doing that just after I finished university. And I used the skills that I learned in those 2 days pretty much every day, right? And
Yeah.
we're in that same moment now. There's a new set of tools. You just got to invest in teaching people how to prompt, how to use AI, and we can have a debate about whatever prompt engineering. And I think that's really important. The third is this, and I come back to this a lot, which is when you're in private practice, my view is you kind of have this thing, you're either perfect or negligent. Then you go in-house, right, where actually things are a bit grayer and you're asked to take on risk. We have a similar thing with AI at the moment, which is you are rightly, whether it is true or whether it is just a perception, people perceive that if I use AI to carry out a task, it increases my personal risk, right? If I don't review this personally and I use AI and something's wrong, I will be blamed for that, right? Whereas if I just did it myself and I make a mistake, probably I'll get told, you know, well, maybe you just made a mistake, right? And you have got to provide then the framework and the safe space, or at least the kind of the right attitude to risk that says, yeah, we get it, right? We've, collectively, we've decided that it is better for you to take time away from this task, use AI, and focus on something else. That piece is also really important, because unless you have the right safe space as well as the skills and the tools, you don't get that.
My slightly controversial comment was, do we just also need to accept, like in all periods of transformation and change, that not everyone will flourish? It's just the nature of change and transformation. Not everyone will flourish, and ensuring that you provide essentially the strategies, the frameworks, the governance, so that for those that have got the right mindset, the curiosity that we've talked about, to enable them as much as possible, because they will lead the charge ultimately, well beyond the time that the three of us are going to be, active. Moving forward, they will lead the charge, and I think it is going to be providing those the framework, the grounding, all of the necessary foundational elements to enable the flourishing of the curious and the change ready. I think is going to be what is going to differentiate organisations, because this is not just a 6-month and a 12-month or even 20-month. This is a long-term strategy, and putting those foundations in place, I think, and accepting that not everyone will flourish in this new time. I don't know if I think it's probably obvious more than controversial, but Thomas?
No, I plus one on that one, but I think it's the first transformation was the transformation of the business, correct? And several people left when I did this in my old job, and they went to the government, for example.
Yeah.
But I think it's also fair to show people what to expect. And I'm with you. Yeah. But I think it's also fair to say this is going to be the new world, and make an informed decision whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So I'm plus one. Yeah. Not everybody will like it.
All right. Let me move on. Jenna, I think we had a couple more polls. So let's flash those. Which skill is critical for legal leaders? Let's data analytics literacy, business strategy, change management. Look, I could vote for each one of those. Let's see how we go, and then we'll have one more following this and get back to a bit of the session, and then we'll leave at least 10 minutes for the Q&A. Yep, change management. That one doesn't surprise me. I expect, Lewis, that won't surprise you either, from all of your dealings with in-house teams. Cool. And the second one, your team's biggest cultural challenge when it comes to transformation. Change fatigue. I hear this one a lot. I hear this one where we've imposed so much change on the legal team, we don't want to impose more. So I'm curious as to what the answer or how the polling is going to be on these options. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. What do we come up with? All right. Change fatigue as well as legacy mindsets. There we go. Okay. Next, look, I think I'm gonna move straight to looking ahead, some bold predictions, and then we'll go to Q&A. So 5 minutes on bold predictions. What's the legal function going to look like in the next handful of years? Thomas, if you were to project out, call it 5 years, and let's assume you're there, you're still you're at Bayer. What does the team look like? What does the function look like? And then I'll ask Lewis for his views.
Yeah, like I said, I think we will have data-driven agreements, and it will be hopefully very positively surprising on what you can then do in-house.
Right.
And you will outsource more.
So is it going to be bigger? What do you think? Are you going to have? You're going to be?
I don't think I have
bigger.
I don't know. Might be correct, but I for sure will have more interesting work. I will outsource the work that I actually don't like.
Yep.
Versus now I have to outsource the great work because I have not enough time.
Yes. Interesting. Lewis, prediction?
I think we'll no longer start with legal functions being full of lawyers. I think what we will see is, much, much more integrated functions and bluntly providers actually that start with kind of data science and consulting and technology and have lawyers as part of that mix rather than, where do lawyers sit in the business? They sit in the legal function or what's the legal function full of lawyers? I think we will have a radical shift there in the next 5 years.
Louis, I told my team, I think half a year or a year ago, that maybe at some point the GC is not a lawyer, was not so highly appreciated with the team, but I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, so it's going to be interesting because if we, in the time frame that we're talking about, because if we think about traditionally how a legal department was established, okay, hire a partner from a law firm, put that partner in and get that partner to build a team. I'm going back 20, 30 years or so, but that's often. And that partner or ex-senior lawyer from the law firm would then hire more lawyers. And those lawyers typically had the same background, they had the same training and so forth. And so that over the last, call it 30, 40, 50 years, that's kind of been institutionalized as the way legal departments. Now, of course, that started to change, but there's a lot of, I won't call legacy is not the right term, but there's a lot of foundational elements that just don't unwind in 1, 2, even 3 years. So when I think about that, I think you're both absolutely right. Lewis, particularly, I do think it's going to look very different, and potentially it won't be a former partner. Right now, would you necessarily, and this is sounding, don't mean to disparage at all, but partners at major law firms, but would you put, let's say, a traditional M&A partner perhaps at the as the new general counsel of a technology company? Maybe, maybe not. But I think that change will take time. I'm with you both. How long it takes, in large part depends upon, I think, how long it takes to just unwind a little bit of what we've seen of the way the organisation or that the legal function has grown over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So cool. All right. So I think we've got about 12 minutes to the top of the hour. So we've got plenty of time. Although there was one more poll. There was one more poll before we go to Q&A. Would you mind, Jenna, the last poll? This is kind of going to be my favourite. I'm most interested in this one, and I'm going to leave an extra 15 seconds or so on this one because I have a theory here about the transition of work in-house. So over the next 1 to 2 years, how do you expect the allocation of work between your in-house team and outside counsel to change? and right from significantly bringing more work in-house to no change at all. So I'm super keen to see the response. Okay. Okay, so we got probably, well, certainly the last one, well, hang on, the last one was we expect to send more work to outside counsel. That is strange. I would have thought you'd have at least some more work going, but nobody's expecting more work to go to outside counsel. Everyone is either expecting no change or more likely bringing work in-house. Look, I think that aligns with expectations and certainly what we've been hearing from functions and what we've been seeing from leadership beyond just legal leadership. So, okay, let's just see what questions we've got. I'm going to read the first one out from Kevin. How do you incentivize the SMEs in your organisation to share, create, update the technologies, the agents, with their personal knowledge, expertise for use at scale? So this is a great question. You've got your SMEs, you've got experts who have been doing things for a long time and have absolutely nailed whether it's a particular form of contracting, whether it's whatever it might be. And you're asking them to essentially train AI so AI can do their work. Lewis, thoughts? Is this something that you have been asked about? Is this a challenge that GC's been talking about? How do I get that expertise, which is in the team, and how do I get that basically augmented?
Definitely. And look, it's also something we kind of grapple with as a firm as well, right? Which is that, you know, and I think Thomas hit the nail on the head earlier, which is everyone in their day has some stuff that they want to do and some stuff that they find mind-numbingly boring. And I'd sometimes talk about the magic wand test. You know, the stuff you should be looking to automate is the stuff that if you had a magic wand, you'd say I never had to do again. And so I think for me, you know, that's the mindset, that's the framework that you're trying to bring to the table and to say, look, like this isn't about taking your brain and taking all the interesting stuff and automating it. This is about giving you back the time and the freedom to be a really great lawyer. And you spend a long time training and learning how to do that. And that's the interesting part. And so I think kind of that's the approach that I see being taken.
Thomas, any thoughts? Well, what strategy have you adopted? Any particular strategies?
It's a bit of combination, correct? So you really have to also show appreciation and rewards, and you have to foster that behavior. And so it's like I said, we have a complete change anyhow. So we're also defining new skill sets for everybody in our company. And that goes back and what do we expect in the future? And if I see those skill sets, those will be the promotions, correct? So it's a little bit about who is really moving on. And the other is really this personal work, what you were talking about. I fully agree. It's this personal efficiency. My work is more fun, which is a benefit in itself. And then being part of a bigger team.
One question I'm often asked, and I can see the pressure on in-house teams with technology choices, being able to demonstrate kind of ROI in whatever they're doing, whatever money they're spending, because typically, of course, often in-house legal teams struggle to get budget for technology. They're often seen as, and this, I think, they're often seen as a cost center and helping them leverage as a value creator. But the challenges in achieving or receiving budget mean there is a huge focus on, if I adopt something, how can I show ROI really quickly? So I wonder, and I've heard this a lot, if we adopt PERSUIT, how quickly can we show ROI? If we adopt AI, how quickly can we show ROI? Any thoughts, Thomas? How you think about it, for example, when you're assessing technology, and how important that ROI question is? And then I'd love to get your thoughts, Lewis, on are you hearing the same thing from in-house teams?
No, absolutely. I think we've come to a world where hourly rates have got to a place which is really, really high. Kirk, you questioned this. So it's about, and I always say, it's, to me, of course, you always have to get the result. But to me, the result is independent of what's the exposure. Yeah, sometimes you have to cover your ass, you hire one of the best law firms. But all in all, I would say, for me, I always expect super work. Yeah, and I also trust my team. I say, you can get it done with everybody. Yeah, it might be harder for you. And the same is true. Now I have AI, I have a decent certainty, I have great knowledge. So for me, of course, it's going to be, how do I see a benefit from the tools I use? Yeah, and it will also get easier to change tools, correct? If you have to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ultimately, it's an investment in yourself where you want to have some payback. Absolutely.
Yep. Lewis?
I think it depends a lot on the area you're looking at, and PERSUIT, is great. So firstly, look, yeah, absolutely common challenge that we see, and that budgets are getting tighter and tighter. I think PERSUIT is great because obviously there's a really close link to spend, and that's something which is entirely within the legal department, or mostly within the legal department's control. For other areas, I think it could be hard because actually, if you think about, contracting is an easy example, but a common example, but an easy one. If you think about implementing CLM, for example, where an outcome might be we can now track, RPI increases, right? Things we haven't charged for that we were entitled to charge for. And so you make that investment and legal can surface that data. And so there's a load more sales that happen because of it. The ROI doesn't come within legal, right? Actually, you've just spent some money getting, and so I think it comes back to where we started the conversation, which is actually, if you're clear about your role as in the business and everyone's valuing you on that basis, that helps the ROI conversation, but it does require opening your mind a little bit in a way that doesn't always come naturally.
Yeah, I've got a great question that's come through here. What does being a great lawyer mean, though, with AI-induced changes to actual work product? How would cleaning data be reflected in a budget capture effort? I'm not sure I understand the second one. I did a post recently on what being a lawyer means in the context of AI, and essentially the focus being there. If you can assume AI has the legal answer, because the knowledge machine can pop out the legal answer, and the question is how you as a lawyer, and typically mainly the soft skills to manage through, whether it's change, whether it's leadership, whether it's communication, things that are very different. The soft skills were very different for AI to do. The emotional intelligence that's required to communicate a difficult message. The soft skills that's required to navigate competing egos within your organization or externally when you're doing a deal. Those skills will be heightened and will be incredibly valued. And I think, unfortunately, are going to be less available than perhaps because there's kind of less training. There's a chance there'll be less training for those. So, any thoughts on Thomas? Now, how you talk to your team of about what it means being a great lawyer or a great contributor, at least, to the legal function.
I think. So you're still there. Sorry, carry on, Thomas.
No, sorry. Just because I need to run, if I may, and then
please. You've got a hard stop. You've got 2 minutes. Yeah.
I need to leave off that answer. Thanks. Sorry for that. I think it's indeed if you're in-house lawyer, you have to give your colleague comfort that you got the right answers. how you got there, he doesn't care. Yeah, so it's the personal relationship. And if you use AI, if you use outside counsel, correct, it doesn't matter. So it's this people skills where you have to say, and the better you do it with AI, the easier your job gets, correct? So it's this building personal relationships, communicating, correct? It's also easy messaging. Yeah, if you can be the smartest lawyer, if you only do lawyer talk, everybody will fall asleep.
Correct.
It's this combination of easy messaging of whatever I get and building the trust. I think that's my take. And with that, I'll let you talk and keep the questions going.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
We'll close it out. Thank you, Thomas. Been an absolute pleasure. Lewis, thank you too. Let's leave the audience with communication skills. Everyone learn how to be the best communicator in the room, and nobody will ever take your job. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jenna, for setting that up for us.